All right. All right, welcome everyone to Native Voices in STEM. My name is Jackie Rybin and I'm an IndigiFuse trainee. And I have had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Tommy Rock today, and I'll be introducing him briefly for he can get going on his talk. So let's see. So firstly, I want to give the U of A's land acknowledgement. We respectively acknowledge the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of Indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the O'odham and the Yaqui. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and Indigenous communities through education, offerings, partnerships, and community service. So just briefly introducing this series, the Native Voices in STEM seminar series is co-sponsored by the NSF, NRT, Indigenous Food, Energy, Water, Security, and Sovereignty Program, the University of Arizona, the Sloan Indigenous Graduate Partnership, and the Water Resources Research Center, as well as the Department of Chemical and Environmental Engineering. The seminar highlights Native scientists, engineers, educators, leaders, and social activists. It offers students an opportunity to network and learn about research and careers of Native leaders in various fields. So welcome all today. And I'm just going to give a brief introduction to our speaker today, Dr. Tommy Rock. Tommy Rock is a member of the Navajo Nation from Monument Valley, Utah. And he's currently is the first one of his family to get a doctoral degree. He earned a bachelor's degree from Arizona State University in environmental geography and recreational management in 2002. He received his master's degree from Northern Arizona University in 2008. He was funded under the National Institute of Environmental Health supplemental grant. Afterward, he worked at the Navajo Nation Environmental Protection Agency, a public water systems supervision program. He went back to Northern Arizona University to receive his doctoral degree in earth science and environmental sustainability in December of 2017. So if y'all can give a warm welcome to Dr. Tommy Rock.
Hey, good afternoon. Yeah, it's like this picture is a picture of a abandoned mine, reclaim. They did some reclamation work. There's a bunch of uranium ore in this area. There's a spring right in there. It's called Mine Claim 28. People have been using it for many generations before the mining took place. And that's one of the places where I sampled some water. In one of my previous project with working with a grassroots organization called Tulana Lake Enterprise. And that was one of the highest reading of uranium, gross alpha, and radium-226/238. The gross alpha was up in the 1,000, and radium-226/238, they were up in the 100 picocuries per liter, so it was really high. The uranium level was around 400 parts per billion. So, and this is not fenced off. I seen animals grazing there, sheep, cattle, horses, and seen people walking in the area as well. So, and I am at Princeton University now. I got the Princeton University Presidential Postdoctoral Research Fellow. So I'm there. I'm going to be 1 year and at the end of June. So I've got another year coming up. Okay. And the reason why I got into this has to do with my grandparents. My grandma, she passed away about 2 years ago. She was like 106 years old. My grandfather, he was a former miner. He was a World War II vet as well, then a miner. He passed away of cancer. And the picture you're seeing on the right-hand side, that's the last place he worked at. There's a rock that fell and closed the entrance. There were 3 of them walking out. 2 of them made it out. The guy behind him didn't make it, and he was crushed to death. And that was his grave for a very long time until they did some reclamation work. How's my voice by there? Can you hear me? Oh, that's good. All right. And my presentation as follows: background, environmental justice, geology, federal policies related to uranium. There's a Uranium Military Radiation Control Act, the Comprehensive Environmental Response or Superfund Act, and talk a little bit about pathway exposure, some of the case studies like 1 and 2. Then I'll go into soil, water contamination, abandoned mines, oil and gas and fracking, then conclusion. And that's the presentation. And these two sites. That's Holiday Mesa. There's a bunch of mines on top, and this is Skyline, where I'm doing some research at the moment, looking at this. So still a lot going on. Navajo Nation covers 3 states, 5 agencies, 110 chapters, populations almost 400,000, and about almost half of them live on the reservation to do a lot of research project on Indian country. If we ever decided to work with Indian country, yeah, getting community support, chapter resolution, agency support, Navajo Nation regulators, and if we're doing environmental health studies or human studies related to that, environmental exposure, then they go another step with the health board. And another case, sometimes they get you to get a letter of support from the Diné Association. So there's so many layers, and it takes a long time for a health studies to start. So there's a lot of transparency. There's a lack of trust related to that as well. So that's why it's like having the community support and building on that relationship is really important. And with mining, this is a map of Western US. Shows you where the hard rock mining taking place, or is around. A lot of it's around indigenous communities, and you didn't hear a lot of about a lot of this stuff like in the media and all. And there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and we're doing. I know that some work is being done from here, from U of A, University of Mexico, and Northern Arizona University as well. So there's still ongoing research going on, a lot of it related to uranium exposure as well. And for health-wise, it's like I think the really is like significant of this slide is like the suicide rate is very high. You hear about it constantly. It's like in almost every indigenous population or community, you hear a lot about suicide, especially among high school students. So it's pretty important, and I know there's some work being done around that as well. I know I'm going pretty fast, so I have a big slide, so I'm trying to get us through all of them so you can hear what I have to say in terms of research. Of the space is just the background, so you understand why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I'm doing the research that I'm doing well, or and all. It's like a pre-colonial, like uranium mining with some of the policies, some of the bad policy from the 1930s, like livestock reductions. A lot of it has to do with overgrazing, but without really being informative of why the livestock reduction was important back then. A lot of it has to do with, like I said, overgrazing. So with not much input from the tribal community, they came up with the livestock reduction, which hurt a lot of family in the process. So that's like an example of bad policy from the federal government that has no cultural understanding of the significance of livestock. And then there's discovery of vanadium and uranium that happened in the 1940s. Some of them actually dated even before 1940. Some of them date all the way back to 1918. 1918 in certain community, some of them were in the 1920s, so it's like over 100 years now. A lot of these places have not been remediated whatsoever, so that's still among the discussion with tribal communities and regulators, tribal regulators and federal regulators as well, trying to speed up the process of doing remediation work as well. So there's still some transparency issue from both the tribal and the federal government as well. And going out in the field doing the work, I see a lot of conantite uraninite ore out in the field as well as cofonite, which encompasses both uraninite and conantite. And for uranium mining, where they happen has a lot to do with the early Triassic period, where if I can get it working. So Texas, there's a river going from Texas all the way up to the northwest. And as it was crossing through the Four Corners, there's a lot of tributaries that were going into this river, and where the riverbed were once were, that's where you see a lot of the uranium ores. And again, they're up in the upper Chinle Formation, as you see in that area. That Skyline mine, and here are some of the uranium ore. And for uranium mining, there's 4 Superfund sites. El Chita is one of them. There used to be a clinic and social service near this site, and there was an elementary school near there. All of the social service and clinic has been closed, and also the elementary school has been closed as well. And there's been quite a bit of uranium cases in that small community as well. And Tuba City is another place, Shiprock, and then there's Church Rock. So there's 4 Superfund sites. All of them was overseen by the Department of Energy. And between the 40s and 1980s, the last uranium mining that took place was 1986 in Church Rock, New Mexico. There was over 30 million tons of uranium ore that have been extracted. And when you look at the area of Navajo Nation, there's Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona, where all the red dots are where the uranium mine sites are. And I'll go talk a little bit about the Superfund site and later in the presentation of how important that is to this issue of remediation. So with the hazard, there's a lot of research that's been done related to the past former uranium mining mine workers. Some of them documented back in the 1950s, 60s, so on and so forth. So we know the health risks associated with uranium mining because of the studies that have taken place. However, there hasn't been a lot of studies that have been done related to the population that live around these former mines. There's still a lot of issues. Those areas has not been fenced off or closed off, and there's a lot of community members that are not well informed of the risks associated with being exposed to some of these uranium mines as well. There's some areas that are quite heavily elevated. So a lot of this stuff, a lot of discussion that I'm talking about, a lot of the presentation that I'm talking about has to do with chronic exposure in a lot of these communities and people that have been exposed to environmental exposure. So with the Uranium Tailored Radiation Control Act, this goes back to the 1978. This is one of the first acts that address environmental exposure. And this is the only policy that's related to uranium mining. Well, not really mining, but milling. But in terms of policy-wise, there's no policy related to uranium mining cleanup. So there's still a lot more work that needs to be done to address that. And the Church Rock uranium mine, uranium mill spill happened back in 1979, I believe. And this is one of the worst accidents that happened related to nuclear, bigger than a 3-mile island back in the East Coast. So because of the Southwest and the population that reside there, it's mostly predominantly Native American or Navajo, there wasn't a lot of immediate attention related to that. So there was over 1 million tons of radioactive waste that went downstream, and there was uranium mining, there was uranium milling, and the ore table, or the ore was beneath the water table, so the water had to be pumped out, and the water was constantly flowing, and that impacted another part of the community further downstream, which I will get into later in the presentation. Then there's the Superfund Act. Due to this act related to population density and how it is used to expedite cleanup or remediation process, it's like a lot, like it's like a lot of it has to do with population density. And since Navajo Nation doesn't have the population density, so they defined it and made some adjustments so that this law can be applicable for the Navajo Nation. So they're targeting mostly areas that have higher concentration of people in communities have been impacted by previous mining. So in areas that you see in this map that shows red, yellow, blue, and green dots, the red dot are 10 times the background level of the area. So in terms of background levels, anything below 30 parts per million will be background level. Anything above that will be exceeding the background level. But a lot of these places I've seen between 12 to 15 parts per million, but some of them go as high as over 300, and some of them even go even further than that, up to like 1,000. And you'll see some of those in later in the presentation. And again, with the national priority list, population density is an issue, and with the mining and what happened and in the past, a lot of it has to do with socioeconomic as well. With the history of mineral exploration on Navajo Nation, Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, and it expires in 1922. With this also relate to downwinders. There's some downwinders that happen over in Nevada with nuclear testing. There's another one over in New Mexico as well, white sands, and it goes hand in hand with the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. And for those people that have been affected, you hear a lot about cancer cases, different type of cancer cases with the nuclear testing that happened in Nevada, so as well as New Mexico as well. And with the same time area, a lot of it has to do with the Cold War era of what's happened between our country and Soviet Union, the tension that built up with the nuclear arsenals. And so because of that, you see a lot of these risks that was taken. A lot of it were considered acceptable risks due to the national security and keeping our country safe from foreigners. So now it's like we are faced with a lot of the communities that have been impacted, and are still feeling the impact as well. So it's not just indigenous population, but also white community as well in Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico as well. The return of Navajo, and really is where it really started in terms of putting the spotlight on the abandoned uranium mines on Navajo Nation. This documentary showed the struggle of one family, particularly in Monument Valley. They live underneath skyline, and they use some of the materials to build their octagons. Like they use the foundations. So one particular family as well, a lot of the women's kids, they died at a younger age because they were like in contact with uranium waste from the mine. And yeah, it's like, so it's like a sad history, and you hear a lot of that when you're doing this type of research going throughout throughout Navajo Nation. So because of this this documentary, there's a journalist that did a story on that in LA Times by the name of Judy Pasternak. She also wrote a book called The Yellow Dirt. And when Henry Waxman, former congressman from California heard about that. He got the federal agency together and told them to clean up the mess that happened. He got the US EPA, Department of Energy, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Bureau of Indian Affairs, and Indian Health Service got involved, and later on Center for Disease got involved as well because of the health study that needed to be done to determine the impact that it had. And from there, it's like they told them to clean up the mess. This was back in 2000. The beginning of it was 2006. They put everything together in 2007. They came with a 5-year plan, and now it's 2022. There's only been, to my knowledge, there's only one remediation that's happened, temporary remediation, that's Skyline. So there's still a lot of work. There's 524 abandoned mines, and that was redefined from 1,200 individual mines, abandoned uranium mines on Navajo Nation. So rewording it, reframe it. So they came with 524. They clumped a bunch of uranium mines close to each other as one. So instead of saying over 12,000 abandoned mines, 524 sounds a lot better than saying over 12,000. So reframing. You hear a lot of reframing, like global warming and change to climate change as well. So the more you go to school and starting with risk communication, you'll know a lot more about reframing. Maybe you do already. So and my tribe sued the federal government, and there's a $2 billion funds that are going to be used to do the cleanup, but $2 billion is not enough to do the cleanup. There's mines in area that needs to be, the road needs to be improved to have the heavy equipment to go up there and to do the work that is necessary. So $2 billion is just like a little tip of the iceberg, so to speak. And my work, a lot of it has to do with pathway of exposure, air, soil, and water. There's some work that has been done related to traditional indigenous food. As part of that research team up north and at Northern Arizona University, we're looking at sheep, we're looking at different tissues, and also coming in direct contact with soil as well, and how it affects people. So this presentation is looking at generational, not just one population in particular, one community in particular. So this is the project I did with Solana Lake Enterprise, and this is a grassroots led organization, and I work with Chris Shuey, has numerous years, like over 30 years of experience doing health related research with University of New Mexico, and Janine Yazzie, a community leader from the Perka River Valley area as well. And she works a lot with her husband, Kern, as well. So amazing team. And Jack Tyrone as well. And for the area, the Perka River Valley area as well, there's no uranium mining, milling whatsoever in this area, but it has been impacted by Church Rock, which had the tailings spill of 79, the milling and mining operation all the way up to 1986. And some of the current work that I'm doing has to do with the oil and gas spills in Utah, and its chapters, what it's called, and near the Chaco Canyon area, working with Council Chapter. There might be more chapters getting involved with this research as well. This is coming from Princeton University, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. So the map you show is looking at different pathway exposure, either by using the materials from the abandoned mine or mill, building homes, sheep corral, or what have you, and water contamination as well. All the black diamonds are where the mines are at. The circle indicate where the contaminated water sources are at. And the darker they are, the more people are likely to be exposed. There's a lot more pathway exposure in those communities with a darker color. And when we're doing this work, This was a water quality project. I wrote the quality assurance plan, got past the quality assurance approval from US EPA Region 9, their quality assurance office, signed off by my tribe, Navajo EPA. And we did this project. It basically like shows you step by step how to collect the water for that to be sampled. And we hired 8 communities and we trained them and about the getting the water sample as well. And we did a 2-day training. This is more of a community science project. And Chris Shuey and I, we did the training. We did basic cartography, coordinates mapping, did some stuff on heavy metal, water quality rating, and Clyde as well. That was all the first day. The community was invited and didn't have to pay anything. We paid for the food, continental breakfast, and we served them lunch as well. We hired some local folks to cook the food, and we fed them. And they asked us any questions they wanted. We answered them the best of our abilities. And if we didn't, we came back next day and answered the question as well. So the second day, we went out sampling. And with the quality assurance plan, we showed them, or they went out and did the sampling, and I was on site. So if they have any questions on water sampling, so they can answer or give me questions and I'll go answer them. And this was where one of the community members asked to sample one of the water. So we did that in the show elevated level in their public water. For this project, we're looking at uranium gross alpha radium 226 plus 228. We didn't do arsenic, but that's another topic to discuss later. But there's the MCL, maximum contaminant level, used in Safe Drinking Water Act. 30 parts per billion. The MCL gross alpha is 15 picocuries per liter, and radium 226 plus 228 is 5 picocuries per liter. We analyze for under the Safe Drinking Water Act, there's 120 contaminants that are analyzed under this Safe Drinking Water Act. So we mostly did heavy metal, gross alpha, and radium 226. So this is the extent of where we sample. So this 2,791 picocuries per liter is in this area. That's the same place that I was telling you about on Mine Claim 28. That's where the sources is at. And there's a couple of them in that area as well. And that's Sanders. And that red line, you can barely see it. That's the Pico River. We sampled south and north of it. But all the results show that there's water contamination. Looking at this map. And this graph was done by Chris Shuey. And using the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, the first result that we've seen from their database is 2003. And this is us 2015 here. We did 2 samples. Anytime we saw the result that exceeded the MCL, went back over there and got another sample. So there was like 2 samples for every well that show any elevated level of uranium or what have you. And we had a big old fight, particularly with this graph, about what is considered chronic exposure with US EPA. It's like Navajo Nation lawyer was on the call as well as US EPA, not US EPA, the federal lawyers were listening in our argument about what is considered chronic exposure. And that is the wellhead, the public water wellhead. And you can barely see this, but this is the elementary / middle school. There's the community. This is predominantly Navajo, about 80% Navajo. This is off the reservation as well. And Arizona Department of Environmental Quality wrote this public notice saying the water is safe, keep drinking it. and the community disagreed. We disagreed with them as well, saying that the water is not safe. So the community set up a GoFundMe page, and they started distributing water, bottled water to the community as well. The school did the same thing as well. So the Sanders outcome is actually good. The Sanders Homeowner Association came together. The Sanders Elementary Middle School received a water filtration system. Navajo Nation Tribal Julie took over the public water. Navajo Nation Public Water System became the regulatory authority, and they help empower the community as well. But the stuff that we train the community also help empower them as well. So a lot of stuff that I'm talking about is community empowerment. That's what Janine and Karen are working on as well. I work with them quite a bit. The 6-wheel solution to Lion Lake Enterprise as well. And there's other grassroots organizations involved with helping, not the environmental exposure piece, but helping empower the community on Navajo Nation, like Dig Deep's involved with that as well. And there's other grassroots organizations that are becoming involved. So a lot of the stuff that's related to improving the quality of life, there's more grassroots getting involved, which is pretty awesome. And it shows you like it doesn't have to come from the top, but it can come from the bottom up and help change the laws and policies related to the health of the community. If I miss a grassroots organization, I apologize. There's barriers, and that is what abandoned mine looks like. Abandoned uranium mine. When the mine is, they are located in that area. There's 5 of them along this little stretch, and the highest is actually not the mine itself, but this area where my friend is standing. One of the reading that I got in this area is like over 6,000 picocures per liter of uranium exposure in that area. And I use a what do you call it, XRF as well to look at the soil. And again, it's like over 6,000 parts per million for that little area as well. The radiation level was like I think the highest one was around 10 micro micro R, I think it was. But yeah, this area was really high. I've seen people camping in that area. I've seen traces of it. I've seen people pulling over, and I've seen little kids walking around that area as well. And there's no sign or warning whatsoever for this area. That's on Peru of Indian or BLM land. I'm sorry. So that is that site right there. And to give you an idea of the background levels, the background level is 7.3 to 20.6 picocures per liter, or not per liter, gram, picocures per gram. Sorry, my bad. And using the XRF, I was able to do some more sampling, and that goes up to when I got really close to the ore, those readings went up to like over 38,000 parts per million. So that is really high. And this is also in Bears Ears as well. And there's the Happy Jack mine is that area as well. There's quite a bit of mine along that little ridge as well. The area that I was looking at was where the washes that were coming down from the mesas. And for this one, I was looking at radium-226. The background level when it comes to radium is like from 0.8 to 1.2 picocures per gram. Action level for radium is 5 picocures per gram. So as you look at this, some of the readings are more than that, and some of them are even higher than this. So this area encourages off-road vehicles like 4-wheelers, dirt bikes, and what have you. And I've seen kids going in there playing in dirt, all the dust coming up. So for me, it's concerning, and it will contribute to public health and whatever health risks associated with being exposed to. It's not just radium. There's uranium as well, vanadium as well, and thorium as well associated with this. So there's multi layer of exposure within that area as well. All of them natural as well, coming from the mine, of course. And this is one of the oldest sites on Navajo Nation where vanadium mining happens. This mine is called Mine Emmett 2, started back in 1918, then made the transition in the 1940s to uranium mining. It's about a mile wide, and there's uranium ore north of it, and there's some uranium ore south of it as well. And you can see some of the traces further downstream as well. This is Moonlight Mine, where I was talking at the beginning of the presentation of where my last place my grandfather worked. It doesn't show any elevated level. This is just mostly reclamation work. It's not remediated as well. So a lot of the waste is beneath and at the bottom as well. So there's no layer underneath to protect the groundwater as well. And this is Skyline. We have a dust collector position near the base of this mesa. And here is the community. And again, we saw some elevated level of uranium. This is parts per million unit wise. This is Oljeto. I grew up in this community. There's uranium mines. There's 3 of them along this ridge. The uranium ores at the bottom. And again, it's like uraniums, they're pretty elevated. It's like I think the highest reading that we got there is like 38,000 parts per million. Again, just like really getting close up to the uranium ore as well. So these are 2 locations I got the uranium ore taken back with me to Princeton. And comes to regulated water, the difference between regulated water and unregulated water. And for me, is that from my point of view, is that when I look at safe drinking water, again, it's focusing on population density. For Navajo Nation, a lot of cultural teaching is done out in the middle of nowhere. So this is to help engage the next generation so they can know their culture, traditionals, you know. But with the Safe Drinking Water Act, population density wise, trying to put a lot of the community in one location, and there's a lack of cultural knowledge being passed down. So from my community, a lot of the elders don't want any cluster homes together. Anytime that comes up, they would say, no, we don't want that. They also say that they've seen a lot of social ills like gang, domestic violence, drug abuse as well. So due to that, they're like, no, we don't want that. So they want to see a lot more homes built further away without the cluster home as well. And due to that, it's like it will cost a lot more money to build the infrastructure, putting the water lines further where people live in isolated area. So due to that, you see these maps where there's regulated watering point where people can get water. Some travel like an hour, 2 hours, or half a day or so to get water. And again, another regulated and unregulated water source where people get water. When it gets really hot, like in the drought that we're in right now, there's certain regulated watering points that get turned off. And again, people, regardless of what the regulators say, tribal regulators or federal regulators say, if these watering points are turned off, they have no choice but to go back to these unregulated water sources. And some of these water sources are elevated in not only uranium, but mostly arsenic. They've seen a lot of unregulated water sources that are elevated in arsenic. And one of the projects I was working on, and this has to do with 6-well solution and Talanic enterprise as well as inclusive community. Use some of the funding to get, they got me these tanks, put them in place. helped me get these hose or pipes and trying to make these springs um, accessible, and so the community members can start using them. These springs, this spring, Pine Spring, and there's another spring. This spring is called Iron Spring. This is Sand Spring. This is inside the tribal park. Pine and Iron Spring, the heavy metal is actually pretty good. It complies with the Safe Drinking Water Act, looking at the inorganic. And these two springs come from the sandstone as well. So I don't have any problem when it comes to waterborne bacteria or nitrate level as well. But this one is different. There's three heavy metals that are elevated as well. So I'm working on this at the moment. And I have some ideas of how to improve this, and can't wait to get back to Princeton so I can start working on this as well with some of the folks from Princeton. And this is work done by the Sixth World Solution, Janine and Kern. They built these rainwater catchment systems. And this is Tunnel Lake Enterprise putting wells. This is along the Little Colorado River. And this one here is in Monument Valley. This is like as I was talking to you, when the regular watering point gets turned off, they go back to sources such as these. This is rusted, so I didn't know what the water quality is like, especially once it's been sitting in this tank. And the cool thing about these two projects with Tulana Lake Enterprise is that back in the 2010, I think it was 2012, right around that area. The tribal and federal regulators, they drilled a well for this community called Black Falls, but they hit water, but the water was too salty. So they abandoned that well. And here we come, just last year, we hit water, and the water quality was good. And we're able to provide good quality water for the community of Black Falls. So it's like, hell yeah, for grassroots, they did something they could. So like, I'm happy with that. And this is the work that I'm doing on oil and gas field. And this is Anna, and this is an abandoned test well for oil, and it's producing water. I see like a little slick of petroleum on top, and they were using this water to irrigate their crops, and animals are drinking that as well. This study was done 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, working with a Princeton undergrad. Her name is Olivia. We did the study, and we've seen elevated level in that area. That's a high school, elementary, and where the clinic is at. And there's community in that area as well as in this area. But the highest reading that we got was in that area as well. This is looking at methane level. This was done in the fall of 2010 or 2020, my bad, 2020. And we did the sampling like around 4 a.m. when it's very cold, where the gas levels were dropping. So you can see the inversion. You'll see the inversion in a little bit. So that is an inversion. And there's a high school, there's an elementary school, and there's a clinic near there as well. And people talk about respiratory issues, and people come up to me talking about brain tumor as well, and yeah, the respiratory issues. So yeah, this work is still going on. So we're still recently starting to work again. So due to the pandemic, I haven't been able to go back, but now it's like pandemic is going away. Hopefully, going to go back out there and refine our method and improve that, and go back out there and do some more work. These are the people. These folks are the folks that I'm working with. this is Fossil. He's not a doctor, but I'm working with him, myself, Nathan, Lars, and Dr. Mark Zondolo as well is involved with this research as well. We're using a drone. There's a sensor on the bottom that we're using to collect methane. And the conclusions, I'm going to talk to you about risk communication, risk assessment, risk management, the Western idea of risk assessments and the worldview of indigenous population, which is holistic, looking at the whole bigger picture, looking at how the environment is, the safer the environment is, the safer for us, and you don't see these health related issue from environmental exposure to the gist of it. Acknowledgement, my mentor, Dr. John Higgins, Mark Zondolo, Fossil, Nathan, Lars, Luke, all from, or four of them from Princeton, and Luke is a community member that we're working with from Santa Fe.
Right. Everyone, can we give a big thank you to Dr. Tommy Rock? Yay. And just for respect of time and allowing Dr. Rock to kind of speak more on his research, he is also allowing us to share, Carl will share in the chat his email if you'd like to get in touch with follow-up questions. So thank you for offering that. And we just want to quickly thank our speaker again, Dr. Tommy Rock, and everyone that joined today. It looks like we got a big crew online. And also our co-sponsors, Indigifuse, Sloan, the Chemie Department, and also Water Resource as a Research Center of U of A. So thank you all for joining today.